Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract money without even trying, while you're doing everything right and still struggling to get ahead? What if the answer has nothing to do with your skills, your education, or even your work ethic, and everything to do with something invisible that's happening inside your mind right now, even as you watch this? Listen carefully, because what I'm about to share with you tonight could completely change your financial reality by tomorrow morning. And I'm not talking about some get-rich-quick scheme or another productivity hack. I'm talking about something much deeper, something that operates while you're asleep, beyond your conscious control. Your brain is like a broadcasting station, transmitting signals every single second of every single day. These aren't just random thoughts floating around in your head. They're actual energetic patterns that ripple out into the world around you. And here's the part that nobody talks about. These signals are creating your financial reality whether you believe it or not. Think about that for a moment. While you're busy chasing opportunities, networking, and grinding away at your goals, there's an invisible transmission happening beneath all of that activity, and it's determining what actually shows up in your bank account. But before we begin diving deeper into this, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You meet someone who seems half as talented as you are, maybe even a bit lazy, yet they're living in abundance while you're counting pennies and wondering what you're doing wrong. It's frustrating, isn't it? You've read the books, attended the seminars, created the vision boards, repeated the affirmations, and still that breakthrough remains just out of reach. Why? Here's what I've discovered after years of studying this phenomenon. The universe doesn't care about your resume. It doesn't respond to your credentials or your hustle. What it responds to is something far more subtle, your vibrational signature. Imagine trying to tune into your favorite music station, but your radio dial is locked onto static. You can hear people talking about the music. You know the station exists, but you can't actually receive it. That's what's happening to most people with money. They're broadcasting on one frequency, while wealth lives on a completely different channel. The fascinating thing is that this isn't about positive thinking or forcing yourself to feel good when you don't. It's about understanding that your mind has multiple layers, and the deepest one, your subconscious, is running programs you didn't even know existed. These programs were installed years ago, maybe in childhood, maybe through painful experiences, and they're still running in the background, creating your current results. Tonight, something different can happen. While your conscious mind sleeps, your subconscious becomes accessible in ways it normally isn't. And if you understand how to work with this window of opportunity, you can begin to rewire those old programs and install new ones that actually align with prosperity instead of pushing it away. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because it goes against everything conventional wisdom teaches about success and money. This isn't about doing more, it's about being different. And that difference starts happening in the invisible realm of frequency and vibration, where true transformation begins. Think about water for just a moment. If you've ever tried to grab it with your hands clenched tight, squeezing desperately, what happens? It slips right through your fingers. The harder you grip, the faster it escapes, leaving you with almost nothing. But when you relax your hands, when you cup them gently and stay open, the water settles perfectly in your palms. You're not forcing anything, you're simply allowing it to be there. This is one of the most profound truths about wealth that nobody teaches you. Money behaves exactly like water. When you approach opportunities from a place of desperation, when there's that tight, anxious energy of, I need this to work or I'm finished, you're essentially clenching your fist. And just like water, prosperity slips away. It's not that you're unworthy or incapable. It's that the very energy you're bringing to the situation is creating resistance. You can feel it, can't you? That tightness in your chest when you're pursuing something you desperately need. That's not just anxiety, it's an actual energetic barrier you're putting between yourself and what you want. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Each video reveals another layer of how your frequency creates your financial reality, and I'd love to have you here for this journey. The people who seem to attract wealth effortlessly aren't doing something magical. They've simply learned to hold their hands open. They approach opportunities with a relaxed certainty, a quiet confidence that says, "I'm ready to receive," instead of, "Please, please, please let this work." Can you sense the difference between those two states? One feels expansive and calm, the other feels contracted and panicked, and that difference in energy creates completely different results in your life. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Behind the scenes of your daily awareness, there's an entire world of programming happening that you're not even conscious of. Every night when you fall asleep, your subconscious mind doesn't rest the way your conscious mind does. It stays active, processing experiences, consolidating memories, and most importantly, running through the thousands of beliefs and assumptions you've absorbed throughout your life. These aren't beliefs you consciously chose. They're patterns that got installed when you were young, impressionable, watching how the adults around you related to money and success. Maybe you grew up hearing that money doesn't grow on trees, or that rich people are greedy, or that you have to sacrifice everything to get ahead. These weren't just casual comments. They became instructions embedded in your subconscious mind. And now, decades later, they're still running in the background like software code, determining what you allow yourself to receive, what you believe is possible for someone like you, and how you automatically respond when opportunities appear. The hidden truth is that these subconscious programs are far more powerful than your conscious intentions. You can wake up every morning and tell yourself you're worthy of abundance, but if your subconscious believes otherwise, guess which one wins? It's like trying to drive forward with the parking brake engaged. You can press the gas pedal all you want, but that invisible resistance keeps you stuck in place. Tonight offers you something rare, a window of opportunity that most people never even know exists. When your conscious mind finally quiets down and stops trying to control everything, your subconscious becomes accessible in a completely different way. This is when real transformation can begin, not through force or willpower, but through a gentle rewiring of those old patterns that have been sabotaging you for years. The journey from struggle to ease doesn't require more effort. It requires understanding how these invisible mechanisms actually work. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific pattern that keeps people trapped in financial limitation even when they're doing everything externally right. This pattern operates so subtly that you might not even recognize it in your own life, but once you see it, everything starts to make sense. The impact of recognizing this one thing can shift your entire relationship with money overnight. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to see what's blocking me." There's something most people don't want to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway because understanding this could be the turning point in your entire financial life. When you approach money from a place of desperation, when that underlying panic is driving your decisions, you're operating on what I call the beggar's frequency. And the universe, as harsh as this might sound, doesn't respond to begging. It can't. It's not being cruel or unfair. It's simply responding to the signal you're actually sending. Imagine standing in front of someone and saying, "I'm confident, I'm capable, I'm ready for success," while your body language is screaming the opposite. Your shoulders are hunched, your voice is shaking, your eyes are filled with fear. Which message do you think they're going to believe? The words or the energy behind them? The universe operates the same way. It doesn't listen to your affirmations or your intentions. It reads your frequency, your actual vibrational state, the truth beneath all the words you're saying to yourself and others. This is why millions of people are stuck in a pattern that feels like madness. They're doing everything they've been taught to do. They wake up early, they repeat positive affirmations in the mirror, they create vision boards, they visualize their goals with perfect clarity, and yet nothing changes. Month after month, year after year, the same financial struggles persist. The breakthrough never quite arrives, and they can't understand why, because from the outside, they're doing everything right. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Your words mean nothing if your frequency contradicts them. You can say, "I am abundant," 1,000 times a day. But if what you're actually feeling deep down is, "I'm terrified I won't have enough," guess which message is being transmitted? The real one. The one you might not even be consciously aware of because it lives so deep in your subconscious that it feels like just part of who you are. Think about how you feel when you check your bank account. Really think about it. Is there a subtle tightening in your stomach, a flicker of anxiety, a quiet voice that says, "This isn't enough"? That feeling, that tiny contraction that happens so quickly you barely notice it, that's your real broadcast. That's the frequency the universe is receiving and reflecting back to you with mathematical precision. The hidden truth behind most financial struggle isn't a lack of opportunity or education or even effort. It's this disconnect between what people are saying and what they're actually broadcasting. They're speaking the language of abundance while their entire being is vibrating the frequency of scarcity. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, can only reflect back what it's truly receiving, not what you wish you were sending. This is happening at a level so deep that most people never even question it. The fear feels normal. The anxiety feels justified. The tightness in your chest when thinking about money feels like just a reasonable response to reality. But it's not reality. It's the lens through which you're viewing reality. And that lens is creating the very experiences you're afraid of. You're caught in a feedback loop where your fear creates more situations to be fearful about. Your scarcity mindset attracts more scarcity, and your vibration of not enough manifests as literal not enoughness in your bank account. The transformation that needs to happen isn't about changing what you say or even what you think consciously. It's about diving beneath those surface-level thoughts and getting to the actual frequency you're emitting from your core. Because that frequency, that energetic signature you're broadcasting 24 hours a day, is what's creating your financial reality. Not your resume, not your work ethic, not your knowledge, your frequency. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding why this frequency is so hard to change and what actually needs to happen for a genuine shift to occur. Because there's a specific reason why most people's attempts at transformation fail, and it has everything to do with where they're trying to make the change happen. The journey from where you are to where you want to be isn't what you think it is. Most people spend their entire lives standing outside a door, knocking harder and harder, believing that if they just prove themselves enough, sacrifice enough, demonstrate enough worthiness, eventually that door will swing open and let them into the life they've been dreaming about. They knock until their knuckles are raw. They plead their case. They list all their qualifications. They explain why they deserve it more than others. And the door remains closed, not because they're unworthy, not because they haven't worked hard enough, but because they're operating under a completely false assumption about how that door actually works. The door to abundance doesn't open to worthiness. It doesn't care about your credentials or how much you've suffered or how desperately you need what's on the other side. Those things are completely irrelevant to its mechanism. The door opens to one thing and one thing only: resonance. When your internal frequency matches what exists, on the other side of that door, it opens automatically, effortlessly, as if it was never locked in the first place. But as long as there's a frequency mismatch, you could stand there knocking for the rest of your life and nothing would change. Think about what this really means for your journey. All the time you've spent trying to become worthy, trying to prove yourself, trying to earn the right to prosperity, it was focused in the wrong direction entirely. It's like trying to open a combination lock by knocking on it instead of dialing in the correct numbers. The effort is irrelevant. The intensity of your knocking makes no difference. Only the alignment matters. Behind the scenes of your struggle, there's been a simple truth operating the entire time. Wealth exists like a radio station, broadcasting its signal constantly, every second of every day. The transmission never stops. It's always available, always present in the field around you. But just like a radio station, you can only receive it when you're tuned to the right frequency. If your internal receiver is set to the station of lack, of scarcity, of "I'm not enough," then no matter how close you are to the source, you won't pick up the signal. Hit the like button if this landed with you. It helps this message reach others who need to understand that frequency matters more than effort. You could be standing right next to the broadcasting tower, surrounded by abundance, with opportunities literally passing through. Your body is radio waves, and you still wouldn't hear a single note because you're tuned to the wrong channel. This is what's happening to most people. They're in environments where wealth is present, they're around successful people, they're exposed to opportunities, but their internal receiver isn't calibrated to pick up those frequencies. And so they experience themselves as separate from abundance, cut off from prosperity, when really they're swimming in it. They just can't perceive it. The revelation here is profound. Changing your external circumstances doesn't require going somewhere else or becoming someone different. It requires tuning your receiver to a different frequency. That's it. The wealth broadcast is already reaching you right now. This very moment. What needs to shift is your ability to receive it. And that happens through internal recalibration, not external manipulation. This is why some people can lose everything and rebuild quickly, while others stay stuck for decades. It's not about resources or connections, it's about frequency. Someone operating on the prosperity frequency can start with nothing and attract what they need almost magnetically. Someone operating on the scarcity frequency can inherit millions and watch it dissolve through their fingers because their internal receiver isn't calibrated to maintain that level of abundance. The impact of understanding this cannot be overstated. It means you're not powerless. You're not waiting for permission. You're not dependent on external circumstances changing first. You have complete control over the one thing that actually matters, your frequency. And that frequency can be adjusted right now, tonight, as you sleep, and your subconscious becomes accessible in ways it normally isn't during your waking hours. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually happens during those hours when you're sleeping, because there's a specific process that occurs in your brain that either reinforces your current frequency or opens the door to transformation. This hidden mechanism is working every single night, whether you're aware of it or not. And once you understand how to work with it, instead of against it, everything accelerates. There's a fundamental shift that has to happen if you want wealth to actually flow into your life instead of constantly slipping away. It's the shift from begging to embodying. Most people spend their entire lives in a state of energetic begging. They might not realize that's what they're doing, but every desperate thought, every anxious feeling, every moment of "please let this work out" is essentially a form of begging the universe for what they want. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Begging never works. Not because the universe is withholding from you, but because the very act of begging confirms and broadcasts the message that you don't have. When you beg, you're operating from a position of lack. You're essentially saying to reality, "I'm empty, I'm insufficient, I need you to fill me." And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, responds by showing you more emptiness, more insufficiency, more need. It's not punishing you. It's simply reflecting back the frequency you're transmitting. This is why people can pray for prosperity, visualize abundance, repeat affirmations for years, and still experience the same financial struggles. Underneath all that surface activity, they're still begging, still approaching wealth from a position of not having it. The transformation happens when you stop asking and start embodying. What does that actually mean? It means you shift from the energy of "I need this to come to me" to the energy of "this is already who I am." You stop trying to attract wealth from outside yourself and start recognizing it as something that flows through you naturally because it's aligned with your core identity. This isn't about pretending or faking confidence you don't feel. It's about a genuine, internal shift where you stop relating to prosperity as something separate from you and start experiencing it as your natural state. Think about how you relate to breathing. You don't beg for air. You don't desperately hope that oxygen will be available when you need it. You don't worry about whether you deserve your next breath. You simply breathe because it's natural, automatic, aligned with who you are as a living being. That's the relationship you need to develop with abundance, not as something you chase or plead for, but as something that's simply part of your existence. Behind the scenes of every moment, your thoughts and emotions are generating vibrations that radiate outward like ripples in water. These aren't just internal experiences happening in your head, they're actual energetic patterns that interact with the field of possibilities around you, literally determining what can and cannot enter your experience. When you're operating from fear, from desperation, from that beggar's frequency we talked about earlier, you're creating an invisible barrier around yourself. It's like an energetic force field that repels the very things you're trying to attract. Imagine trying to pull a magnet toward you while holding another magnet with the same pole facing it. The harder you try to force them together, the stronger the repulsion becomes. That's exactly what's happening when your vibrational state doesn't match what you're pursuing. You can work incredibly hard. You can take all the right actions. But if your underlying frequency is broadcasting lack and fear, you're creating resistance that pushes opportunities away before they can reach you. This is the hidden mechanism behind why some people seem cursed with bad luck while others appear blessed. It's not luck at all. It's vibrational alignment or misalignment. The person who seems blessed isn't doing anything magical. They've simply learned, consciously or unconsciously, to maintain a frequency that allows abundance to flow toward them without resistance. Their internal state creates a pull instead of a push. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how you can actually shift this frequency tonight while you're sleeping. Because there's a specific window of opportunity that opens when your conscious mind finally steps aside and your subconscious takes over. This is when the real rewiring can happen, when those old patterns that have been running your life can finally be replaced with something new. Put down, "I embody abundance now." Your frequency isn't just influencing your reality, it's actively creating it. Every single second. This is the invisible law that governs manifestation, and it operates with the same consistency and precision as gravity or any other natural force. Behind the scenes of your everyday life, while you're going about your routine, while you're working and thinking and making decisions, your frequency is working non-stop. It's organizing circumstances, arranging encounters, attracting certain people while repelling others, opening specific doors while closing different ones. All of this is happening automatically, based on the vibrational instructions you're broadcasting. Think about that for a moment. You're not just passively experiencing reality, you're actively constructing it through your energetic output. Every emotional state you hold, every belief you carry, every pattern of thought you repeat. These are instructions being sent out into the field around you, and that field responds by materializing experiences that match those instructions. This isn't mystical or metaphorical, it's mechanical. Your frequency is the blueprint, and reality is the construction crew building, according to that blueprint, whether you like what's being built or not. The challenge is that most people have no idea they're sending these instructions. They think their thoughts are private, contained, irrelevant to what actually happens. In their life, they believe their emotional states are just internal reactions to external circumstances, not recognizing that the causation runs in the opposite direction. Your internal state isn't responding to your circumstances. Your circumstances are responding to your internal state. Once you truly grasp this, once it stops being just an interesting concept and becomes a lived understanding, everything about how you approach your life changes. There's a doorway that exists right now between your current financial reality and the one you've been imagining. You can probably sense it, can't you? That threshold between where you are and where you want to be. And I'd be willing to bet you've been doing what most people do, standing outside that door, knocking with increasing desperation, trying every technique you can find to force it open. You knock harder, you try different approaches, you make promises about what you'll do once you're on the other side. You explain why you deserve to. Enter, and the door remains absolutely frustratingly closed. Here's what nobody tells you. That door doesn't respond to force. It doesn't care how hard you knock or how convincingly you plead your case. It doesn't evaluate your worthiness or measure your effort. The mechanism that opens it is entirely different from what you've been taught. The door opens at the exact moment, not a second before, not a second after, when you stop standing outside as a beggar and step into recognition of what I call your energetic birthright. Your energetic birthright is the understanding that abundance isn't something you need to earn or prove yourself worthy of receiving. It's your natural state. Scarcity is what you learned. Limitation is what got programmed into you. But underneath all that conditioning, there's a frequency that's been there since before you absorbed all the beliefs about not having enough, not being enough, not deserving enough. That original frequency is still accessible. It's still broadcasting from your core, just buried under layers of fear and doubt. The transformation from standing outside that door to walking through it isn't about becoming someone different. It's about peeling away what isn't actually you and reconnecting with what's always been true. It's about shifting from the energy of pursuit and desperation to the energy of recognition and claim. Not claiming in an aggressive, demanding way, but claiming in the sense of acknowledging what's already yours by nature. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually prevents most people from making this shift, because there's a specific pattern that keeps you locked outside that door even when you think you're doing everything right. It's so subtle that you might not even realize it's operating, but once you see it clearly, the path forward becomes obvious. What if everything you've been taught about abundance is backwards? What if prosperity isn't something rare and difficult that you have to chase down and capture through extraordinary effort? What if it's actually your default setting, your original programming, before the world got its hands on you and taught you otherwise? This isn't some feel-good philosophy to make you feel better about struggling. This is a fundamental truth about how you arrived in this world. You weren't born worried about money. You didn't emerge into existence carrying anxiety about bills or fear about your financial future. You didn't arrive with beliefs about scarcity or limitations or whether you deserved good things. Think about that. Every single limiting belief you have about money, every fear, every sense of unworthiness, all of it came later. You absorbed it from your environment like a sponge soaking up water. You learned it from watching the adults around you stress and struggle. You picked it up from society's messages about what's possible for people like you. You internalized it through experiences where you felt lack or witnessed limitation. And because you learned these patterns so early, so thoroughly, layer upon layer upon layer, they began to feel like part of your essential nature. You started believing that this is just how things are, that scarcity is reality and abundance is the exception. But that's not true. Scarcity is the learned behavior. Abundance is what you are when all the conditioning falls away. This realization, when it really lands, creates a seismic shift in how you relate to prosperity. You stop approaching it like a hunter tracking prey through the wilderness and start recognizing that the real journey isn't about pursuit at all. It's about reception. Can you feel the difference between those two words? Pursuit and reception. They create completely different realities. When you're in pursuit mode, there's an underlying assumption of separation. You're over here, and what you want is over there, and you need to somehow bridge that gap through effort and strategy and relentless action. There's a tightness to it, a contraction. Your whole being is oriented toward getting something you don't currently have. Every decision comes from that place of not having, which means every decision is contaminated by the frequency of lack. But reception operates from an entirely different paradigm. When you're in a state of reception, you're not chasing anything. You're opening. You're allowing. You're recognizing that what you desire is already flowing toward you, and your job isn't to hunt it down, but to remove the resistance that's blocking its natural arrival. Can you sense how much more relaxed that feels? How much more spacious? There's no desperate grasping, no anxious striving, just a calm readiness to receive what's already moving in your direction. This shift from pursuit to reception might seem subtle, like a small adjustment in perspective, but its impact on your actual lived experience is massive. When you're pursuing, you're broadcasting the frequency of chase, which creates a reality where things always seem just out of reach. You get close but not quite there. You make progress but then slide backward. You experience those frustrating near misses where success appears to be right around the corner and then vanishes. That's not bad luck. That's the natural result of operating in pursuit mode, where the very energy you're bringing to the situation pushes away what you're trying to grab. But when you shift into reception, something different happens. Doors that were closed suddenly become accessible. Opportunities that were invisible reveal themselves. Resources flow with less friction. And the most remarkable part is that it all unfolds without the grinding, exhausting effort you thought was necessary. You're still taking action, still moving forward, but the quality of that movement has transformed. It's inspired rather than desperate, effective rather than frantic, aligned rather than forced. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this shift from pursuit to reception actually manifests in your daily decisions, because there's a specific way that people unknowingly sabotage themselves even when they think they're moving toward abundance. The hidden truth is that most people are operating in pursuit mode without even realizing it, and that unconscious pattern is creating the very limitation they're trying to escape. The universe isn't sitting somewhere deciding whether you deserve what you want. It's not evaluating your character or measuring your worthiness. It's responding with mathematical precision to the signal you're broadcasting. When you make that shift from chasing to receiving, when you genuinely change the instructions you're transmitting, reality has no choice but to reorganize itself accordingly. Instead of broadcasting that frequency of lack, that signal of I need, I'm incomplete, I'm insufficient, you start transmitting something completely different. You're sending out, I'm ready, I'm open, I'm available. And the universe, being the perfect responder that it is, mirrors back that new frequency. What does this actually look like in real life? Locked doors that wouldn't budge suddenly swing open with ease. People who can genuinely help you appear in your life, seemingly out of nowhere. Resources that were blocked start flowing with less resistance. Opportunities that were invisible become obvious. And here's what's fascinating. None of this requires you to force or manipulate or hustle harder. It happens naturally, almost automatically, because you've changed the underlying frequency that was creating your previous reality. But here's where most people get tripped up, and I want to share a story that illustrates this perfectly because you might see yourself in it. There was someone I'll call Aaron, and if you watched his daily routine from the outside, you'd think he was doing everything perfectly. Every single morning, he stood in front of his mirror and repeated affirmations with what appeared to be complete conviction. I am abundant. Money flows to me easily. I am worthy of wealth. He said these words clearly, confidently, with his shoulders back and his voice steady. He had vision boards on his walls. He read all the right books. He followed every strategy the personal development experts recommended. From the surface, Aaron looked like someone who was going to succeed. But there was something happening beneath that polished exterior, something invisible yet incredibly powerful. Every time Aaron spoke those affirmations, there was a tremor running underneath the words. His voice might have sounded confident, but his heart was racing with anxiety. His mind might have been visualizing abundance, but his stomach was churning with worry. The affirmations weren't actually coming from belief. They were coming from desperate hope, like prayers being shouted into the void by someone who's terrified those prayers won't be answered. And this is exactly what keeps millions of people trapped despite their best efforts. They're doing all the right things on the surface, the visualizations, the affirmations, the goal-setting exercises, but underneath, their frequency is screaming something completely different. The universe doesn't hear your words. It doesn't matter how perfectly you phrase your affirmations or how many times you repeat them. What the universe picks up on is your actual frequency, your real vibrational state, the truth that's broadcasting from the deepest part of your being. Aaron could say, I am abundant 10,000 times, but if his internal state was broadcasting, I'm terrified I won't have enough, I'm afraid this won't work, I'm desperate for things to change, then that's the signal being received and reflected back, not his words, not his intentions, his frequency. And his frequency was contaminated by fear at the source, which meant every action he took, every affirmation he spoke, every visualization he practiced was being undermined by this invisible undercurrent of panic. This is the pattern that keeps people stuck for years, sometimes decades. They treat manifestation like it's about technique, as if finding the right formula or the right words will magically unlock everything. But manifestation isn't a technique you perform. It's a state you embody. It's not about what you say or even what you consciously think. It's about what you are at the frequency level. And that frequency either aligns with what you're calling in or contradicts it entirely. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how you can tell whether your own affirmations and intentions are coming from genuine alignment or from that same place of hidden desperation that kept Aaron trapped. Because there are specific indicators that reveal the truth about your frequency. And once you know what to look for, you can begin making the necessary adjustments. How do you know if what you're saying actually aligns with what you're broadcasting? This is the question that changes everything, because most people have a massive gap between their conscious words and their unconscious frequency, and they don't even realize it exists. You might be saying all the right things, thinking all the right thoughts, but if there's a disconnect between your words and your actual vibrational state, none of it matters. The universe isn't listening to your affirmations. It's reading the energetic signature underneath them. Think about someone who's telling you they're fine while their body language screams distress. Their words say one thing, but everything else about them contradicts it. You don't believe what they're saying because you're picking up on the real message beneath the surface. The universe operates the same way. It picks up on what's real, what's genuine, what's actually true about your internal state, regardless of the words you're speaking out loud or even thinking in your mind. This is why manifestation has become such a frustrating topic for so many people. They've learned techniques, they've memorized affirmations, they've created elaborate morning routines designed to shift their consciousness, and nothing changes. Month after month, the same patterns persist, the same limitations remain in place, and they can't understand why, because they're doing everything they've been taught to do. But here's the revelation that cuts through all the confusion. Manifestation isn't a technique. It never was. It's a state of being. You can't technique your way into abundance. You can't perform the right steps and expect reality to suddenly bend to your will. That's not how it works. What actually creates change isn't what you do or say. It's what you are at the frequency level. And until that fundamental resonance shifts, until your core vibration actually aligns with what you're claiming to want, you'll keep experiencing the same cycle no matter how many new techniques you try. This is the trap that keeps people stuck for years. They keep searching for better methods, more powerful affirmations, more effective visualization practices. They jump from one system to another, always hoping the next one will be the breakthrough they've been waiting for. But they're looking in the wrong place entirely. The problem isn't that they haven't found the right technique. The problem is they're trying to solve an internal frequency issue with external methods. Behind the scenes of every genuine transformation, there's always this moment of recognition where someone stops trying to fix themselves through techniques and starts examining their actual state of being. They stop asking, "What should I do differently?" and start asking, "Who am I being right now in this moment beneath all the words and intentions?" That shift in questioning changes everything because it points you toward the real work that needs to happen. The journey from where you are to where you want to be isn't about accumulating more knowledge or learning better strategies. It's about recognizing that you're broadcasting a frequency right now, and that frequency is creating your experience, not your intentions, not your wishes, not your carefully crafted affirmations, your frequency. And that frequency is determined by your state of being, which includes all the unconscious beliefs, unresolved fears, and hidden assumptions you carry about yourself and what's possible for you. When Aaron finally understood this, when he stopped focusing on perfecting his affirmations and started examining his actual internal state, everything began to shift. He realized he'd been treating manifestation like a performance, like something he did for 15 minutes each morning before getting on with his real life. But manifestation isn't something you do, it's something you are. It's the constant broadcast you're transmitting through every moment of your existence, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually needs to happen for your state of being to genuinely shift, because there's a specific process that occurs during sleep that can accelerate this transformation in ways your conscious effort never could. And understanding this process is the key to everything we've been discussing. There's a phenomenon in physics that most people have never heard of, but once you understand it, everything about how abundance actually works becomes clear. It's called sympathetic resonance, and it's happening all around you right now, whether you're aware of it or not. Here's how it works. When you strike a tuning fork that's calibrated to a specific frequency, something remarkable happens. Every other tuning fork in the room that matches that exact frequency will start to vibrate, even though nothing physically touched them. They begin humming, resonating, responding to the sound wave traveling through the air. This isn't magic or metaphor, it's Physics. It's the way energy naturally operates in the universe. And here's what most people never realize. This exact same principle governs how wealth flows into your life. Your entire being is like a tuning fork, constantly vibrating at a specific frequency. And out there in the field of infinite possibilities, there are opportunities, resources, people, and circumstances that are also vibrating at their own frequencies. When your frequency matches the frequency of prosperity, those things begin to vibrate in response to you. They're drawn toward you through sympathetic resonance, not because you worked harder than everyone else, not because you deserved them more, but because you're broadcasting on the same channel they exist on. This is why some people seem to attract success effortlessly while others struggle despite massive effort. It has nothing to do with effort at all. It's about resonance. If you're vibrating at one frequency and what you want exists at a different frequency, no amount of action will close that gap. You're like two tuning forks that don't match. One can vibrate all it wants, but the other will remain silent because there's no resonance happening. But here's where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. And this is crucial to understand. When you approach money from a place of desperation, when there's that underlying energy of need and fear, you're essentially broadcasting a very specific frequency. And that frequency is saying loud and clear, I don't have, I need, I'm incomplete without this. Every time you look at your bank account with anxiety, every time you feel that knot in your stomach about bills, every time you worry about your financial future, you're striking that tuning fork of lack. And the universe, which operates on perfect resonance, doesn't judge you or punish you. It simply reflects that frequency back to you with absolute precision. More lack, more need, more incompleteness. Not because reality is cruel or because you're cursed, but because the universe is functioning exactly as it's designed to function. It's a mirror, it's an echo chamber. Whatever frequency you broadcast consistently, that's what gets amplified and returned to you. This is happening whether you're aware of it or not, whether you believe in it or not. The laws of resonance don't require your belief to operate, just like gravity doesn't need your permission to keep you grounded. The transformation happens when you stop broadcasting the frequency of what you don't have and start embodying the frequency of what you want to experience. This isn't about pretending or faking feelings you don't have. It's about genuinely shifting your internal state so that you're vibrating on the same channel as abundance. When that alignment happens, when your frequency matches prosperity, opportunities don't need to be chased. They're drawn to you magnetically because resonance is pulling them in your direction. Think about what desperation actually feels like in your body. There's a contraction, a tightness in your chest, tension in your shoulders. Your breath becomes shallow. Your mind races with worry. That physical sensation is your body expressing the frequency you're broadcasting. Now compare that to what it feels like when you're genuinely relaxed and trusting. Your chest opens, your shoulders drop, your breath deepens, your mind quiets. That's a completely different frequency, and it attracts completely different results. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how this resonance actually works on a practical level in your daily life, because there's a specific way your frequency is being contaminated by patterns you might not even be aware of. And these patterns are keeping you locked into the wrong channel, no matter how hard you try to shift. Every single moment you spend in anxiety about money, every time you check your account balance with that familiar dread, every instance where you feel that tightness in your stomach when thinking about bills, you're doing something far more significant than just experiencing an unpleasant emotion. You're striking the tuning fork of lack. You're sending out a clear, powerful signal that broadcasts, I don't have enough. And the universe, operating with perfect precision on the laws of resonance, takes that signal and reflects it back to you. Not because it's punishing you, not because you've done something wrong, but because it's giving You exactly what you're asking for through your frequency. This is the feedback loop that keeps people trapped for decades. They experience lack, which creates anxiety, which broadcasts more lack, which creates more situations to be anxious about. Round and round it goes, year after year, and they never realize they're the ones perpetuating the cycle through their own vibrational output. The universe isn't working against you. It's responding to you with mathematical accuracy, showing you in physical form what you're holding as truth in your energetic field. But here's the revelation that changes everything, and this is where your power actually lies. You can't always control your circumstances, at least not immediately. You can't snap your fingers and make your bank account suddenly double. You can't force opportunities to appear out of thin air. You can't control what other people do or what the economy does or what happens in the world around you. All of that is outside your direct control. But there's one thing you have complete authority over, one thing that's entirely within your domain. Your frequency. Right now, in this very moment, you have a choice. You can strike the tuning fork of lack, or you can strike the tuning fork of abundance. You can broadcast scarcity, or you can broadcast prosperity. And this isn't just a one-time decision you make and then forget about. It's a moment-by-moment choice that happens hundreds of times throughout your day. Every time you think about money, every time you face a financial decision, every time you consider your future, you're choosing which tuning fork to strike. The impact of making this choice consciously, consistently, over time is profound, beyond what most people can imagine. You're not just feeling different emotions, you're literally rewriting the instructions you're sending to the field around you. You're changing the blueprint that reality is using to construct your experience. Think about that. The same way an architect can change a building by modifying the blueprint before construction begins, you can change your life by modifying the frequency you're broadcasting before circumstances materialize. This is the hidden truth that personal development often misses. It's not about working harder or being more disciplined or learning better strategies. All of those things might help on the surface, but they're rearranging furniture in a house that's built on the wrong foundation. The real transformation happens when you recognize that your frequency is the foundation, and everything else builds on top of that. Change the frequency, and everything built upon it has to reorganize itself accordingly. Behind the scenes of every success story you've ever admired, there was this invisible shift that happened first. Someone changed their frequency before their circumstances changed. They started broadcasting abundance before they had evidence of it in their bank account. They embodied prosperity before the external world reflected it back to them. And because they held that frequency consistently, reality had no choice but to eventually match it. The journey from struggle to ease isn't about finding some secret opportunity or lucky break. It's about making the decision moment by moment, day by day, to consciously choose which frequency you're broadcasting. And here's what makes this both challenging and liberating. Nobody can do this for you. No guru, no system, no technique can change your frequency. Only you can make that choice. But the moment you truly commit to it, the moment you start paying attention to which tuning fork you're striking in each moment, everything begins to shift. Now, I want to go even deeper into what specifically happens during the hours you're sleeping tonight, because there's a window that opens when your conscious resistance finally quiets down, and that's when the deepest reprogramming of your frequency can occur without the interference of your waking mind. Put down, I choose my frequency consciously. Sometimes transformation doesn't come from trying harder. Sometimes it comes from the complete opposite, from the moment when you finally stop trying altogether. This is what happened to Aaron after months of chasing a business opportunity he was certain would change his life. He'd invested everything into it, his time, his energy, his hopes, his mental and emotional bandwidth. He strategized every angle, obsessed over every detail, convinced himself that if he just worked hard enough, pushed long enough, the breakthrough would come. And then one morning, he received the news. The opportunity had fallen through. Everything he'd been building toward collapsed in an instant. He found himself standing in a crowded marketplace, people moving around him like water flowing past a stone, and something inside him just broke. Not in a destructive way, not into depression or bitterness, but in a way that released years of accumulated tension he hadn't even realized he was carrying. In that moment of exhaustion, of complete depletion, he stopped. He stopped trying to make things happen. He stopped forcing outcomes. He stopped gripping so tightly to his vision of how things should unfold. He just stood there, breathing, allowing himself to exist without the crushing weight of desperate effort. And in that space of surrender, something extraordinary happened beneath the surface of his awareness. His entire energy field reorganized itself. It was like every cell in his body had been clenched into a fist for years, and suddenly they all relaxed into an open palm. The change wasn't visible to anyone walking past him in that marketplace, but internally it was seismic. The frequency he'd been broadcasting for so long, that tight, anxious, desperate frequency, dissolved, and in its place, something new emerged: openness, space, trust. Now, this is where most people get confused, and it's a crucial distinction to understand. What Aaron experienced wasn't giving up, it was letting go. And those two things, despite sounding similar, create completely opposite realities. When you give up, you collapse. You resign yourself to defeat. There's a heaviness to it, a sense of hopelessness, a closing down of possibility. You're essentially saying, "It's over, I failed, there's nothing left to try." That's a contraction, an ending, a descent into powerlessness. But letting go is something entirely different. Letting go comes from a place of trust rather than defeat. It's a release rather than a collapse. When you let go, you're not saying, "I give up on what I want." You're saying, "I release my death grip on how it has to happen." You're expanding into possibility rather than contracting into resignation. You're opening your hands rather than dropping the weight in exhaustion. Can you feel how different those two states are energetically? When Aaron let go in that marketplace, he wasn't abandoning his desire for success or prosperity. He was releasing his attachment to one specific path, one particular outcome, one narrow vision of how his life had to unfold. And that release created space. Space for something new to enter, space for opportunities he hadn't been able to see because he was so fixated on the single path he thought was the only way forward. His frequency shifted from desperation to openness, and the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, immediately began responding to that new signal. Within weeks, not months, not years, but weeks, opportunities he'd never imagined began appearing in his life. Not because the universe suddenly decided he was worthy, but because his frequency had changed. He was no longer broadcasting the signal of desperation and lack. He was broadcasting the signal of openness and trust. And reality, reflecting that new frequency back to him with precision, brought forward opportunities, connections and resources that matched his transformed state. The hidden truth in Aaron's story is that the breakthrough didn't come from his effort. It came from the space that opened up when he stopped efforting. Behind the scenes of every genuine transformation, there's this moment of release, where you stop pushing against reality and start flowing with it. That's when doors that were locked suddenly become accessible. That's when the path forward reveals itself naturally, rather than having to be forced into existence. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding what actually creates this state of letting go, because it's not something you can force or manufacture. there's a specific internal shift that has to happen first, and that shift is directly connected to what occurs in your subconscious mind during sleep, when your conscious resistance finally quiets down. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to let go." There's a symbol that represents something most people never understand about wealth, and once you see it, your entire relationship with money transforms. Imagine a perfect circle representing wholeness, completeness, the eternal flow of energy that never begins and never ends. Now picture a vertical line cutting through the center of that circle, dividing it into two equal halves. That line represents something crucial, the balance point between receiving and giving. Not one or the other, but both in perfect equilibrium. This symbol reveals a hidden truth that changes everything about how you approach abundance. Most people think prosperity means accumulating, gathering everything toward yourself, pulling it in and holding it tight. They imagine themselves as containers that need to be filled up, and once full, they need to protect that fullness at all costs. But that's not how true wealth operates. That's not how abundance actually flows in the universe. True prosperity doesn't flow to you, it flows through you. You're not a container trying to fill yourself up and stay full forever. You're a channel through which abundance moves. Think about what this means for how you've been relating to money. If you've been approaching it like a container, trying to accumulate and hoard, trying to keep everything you receive because you're afraid there won't be more, you've been working against the fundamental nature of how wealth operates. And that's why it feels so hard, why there's so much struggle, why even when money comes in, it doesn't stay or grow the way you hoped it would. Now, think about a river for a moment. Picture a healthy, flowing river. It's constantly receiving water from upstream, and it's constantly giving water downstream. It never stops receiving, and it never stops giving. And because of that continuous flow, because it allows the movement rather than trying to control it, the river stays full and abundant. It's alive, fresh, vital. The water is clear and clean because it's moving. That's what creates its abundance, not the holding, but the flowing. But what happens when you dam up a river? When you try to keep all the water for yourself, refusing to let it continue its natural course? The water stops moving. It becomes stagnant. Eventually it becomes toxic. What seemed like a way to secure abundance actually destroys it, turning something life-giving into something dead and unusable. Your relationship with money works exactly the same way. When you operate from fear of not having enough, you dam up the flow. You hold too tightly. You refuse to let money move through you naturally because you're terrified that if you let any go, there won't be more coming. And that fear, that clinging, that desperate attempt to control and contain, it creates exactly what you're afraid of. The flow stops. The abundance stagnates. What could have been a continuous stream becomes a blocked, stagnant pool. The transformation happens when you recognize yourself not as a container, but as a conduit. You're not meant to accumulate and hoard. You're meant to receive and give in balanced rhythm. Money flows to you so it can flow through you and out into the world, and then more flows in to replace what moved through. It's a cycle. A circulation, a constant movement that maintains itself through your willingness to participate in the flow rather than interrupt it. This doesn't mean being reckless with money or giving away what you genuinely need. It means understanding that you're part of a larger system of exchange, and your prosperity depends on your willingness to both receive fully and give freely. When you receive without guilt or unworthiness, and when you give without resentment or fear, you maintain the flow. And that flow is what creates lasting abundance. Behind the scenes of every person who lives in genuine prosperity, you'll find this principle at work. They're not hoarding their wealth. They're circulating it. They're not gripping tightly to every dollar. They're allowing natural movement. And because they trust the flow, because they operate as channels rather than containers, more continues to flow through them. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually blocks this flow for most people, because there's a specific pattern of thinking that creates the dam. And it's so subtle that you might not even realize it's operating in your own life right now, affecting every financial decision you make. Here's something that contradicts everything you've been taught about success, and it might be uncomfortable to hear, but understanding this could save you years of wasted effort. Hard work has absolutely nothing to do with your frequency. Let that sink in for a moment, because it goes against every message society has programmed into you since childhood. You've been told that if you just work hard enough, sacrifice enough, push through enough obstacles, eventually you'll break through to prosperity. But that's not how vibrational mechanics actually work. You can move mountains from a place of scarcity and still end up exactly where you started. You can work yourself into complete exhaustion, sacrifice relationships, miss important moments with your family, pour every ounce of your energy into building something, and if you're doing all of it from a frequency of fear and lack, you'll find yourself right back at the beginning, staring at the same struggles, wondering what went wrong. The effort itself becomes a trap, keeping you busy but not fulfilled, active but not advancing, moving constantly, but going nowhere. This is the hidden truth that nobody wants to hear, because it means that all the suffering, all the sacrifice, all the relentless grinding might be completely pointless if it's coming from the wrong internal state. People don't want to believe this because they've invested so much into the idea that effort equals results. They've built their entire identity around being someone who works harder than everyone else. But working hard from a frequency of fear and desperation is like digging a hole in the wrong location. The effort is real, the work is hard, but you're never going to find what you're looking for because you're in the wrong place entirely. Now imagine two people building identical businesses. Same industry, same business model, same marketing strategies, same hours invested, same courses taken, same advice followed. From the outside, their actions are indistinguishable. If you watch them both for a week, you couldn't tell the difference in what they're doing. But inside, at the frequency level, they're operating in completely different universes. The first person is acting from a foundation of trust, expansion, and alignment. They believe in what they're creating. They feel worthy of success. They're relaxed and confident, making decisions from clarity rather than panic. When challenges arise, they see them as part of the journey, not as evidence that they're failing. The second person is taking the exact same actions, but they're acting from fear, control, and desperate need. They doubt whether they can really pull this off. They question their worthiness constantly. They're anxious every morning, checking metrics obsessively, making decisions from scarcity rather than abundance. Every action they take is contaminated by this underlying frequency of fear. When challenges arise, they spiral into panic, convinced that everything is falling apart. Same business plan, same strategies, same effort, but completely opposite results. The first person succeeds beyond their wildest expectations. The second person struggles endlessly, always feeling like they're pushing a boulder uphill, never quite reaching the summit. And when they look at each other, the struggling one can't understand it. We're doing the same things, they think. Why is it working for them and not for me? The answer has nothing to do with the actions. It has everything to do with the frequency behind those actions. This is the invisible component that business schools don't teach and productivity seminars ignore completely. They'll show you strategy and tactics and time management, but they won't tell you that the energetic state you're operating from determines your results far more than any strategy ever could. The transformation from struggle to ease happens when you recognize that your effort isn't the problem. The frequency behind your effort is what's creating your experience. You can continue working hard if that feels natural to you, but when that work comes from expansion rather than contraction, from joy rather than fear, from inspiration rather than desperation, everything changes. The work itself becomes lighter, the results come faster. The journey feels sustainable instead of exhausting. Behind the scenes of every success story you admire, there was this internal shift that happened first. Someone changed their frequency before the circumstances changed. Now, I want to go even deeper into what specifically happens tonight while you're sleeping, because there's a process occurring in your brain during those hours that either locks in your current frequency or opens the door to complete transformation. And most people have no idea this process even exists. Tonight, while you're sleeping, something remarkable is happening in your mind that most people are completely unaware of. Your conscious mind, the part of you that's listening to these words right now, the part that makes deliberate decisions and analyzes information, eventually shuts down for the night. But your subconscious mind doesn't rest the way your conscious mind does. It stays active, processing the day's experiences, consolidating memories, sorting through information, and most importantly, running the programs that were installed years ago, sometimes decades ago, when you were too young to question what was being programmed into you. Your conscious mind is incredibly powerful, but it's also limited. It's constrained by the beliefs you've consciously adopted, the conditioning you've absorbed, the logic and reasoning that keeps you operating within acceptable boundaries. But your subconscious operates differently. It's deeper, more fundamental, more connected to the actual frequency you're broadcasting. And during sleep, when your conscious guard finally comes down, when you stop trying to control everything, your subconscious becomes accessible in ways it normally isn't during your waking hours. This is the window of opportunity that changes everything. When you understand how to work with your subconscious rather than against it, when you learn to communicate with it in its own language, you can begin reprogramming your frequency at the deepest possible level. Not through force or willpower, but through alignment with the natural processes already happening in your brain every single night. The transformation doesn't require you to do more. It requires you to understand what's already occurring and work with it intentionally. But here's where most people get stuck, and this is crucial to understand if you want anything to actually change. You can have the most beautiful intentions in the world. You can want abundance for genuinely good reasons, to help your family, to contribute to your community, to make a positive impact, to create security for the people you love. These are noble, altruistic motivations. Surely the universe recognizes good intentions, right? Surely wanting prosperity for the right reasons should count for something? The uncomfortable truth is that intentions don't matter to the universe. At least not in the way you think they do. Your intentions live in your conscious mind. They're thoughts, ideas, mental constructs about why you want what you want. But the universe doesn't communicate with your mind. It doesn't read your thoughts or evaluate your reasons. The universe communicates exclusively with your vibrational field, with the frequency you're actually broadcasting from your core. And that frequency might be completely different from what you consciously intend. You can have the purest intentions imaginable, wanting wealth so you can be generous and help others and make the world better. But if underneath those noble intentions, your actual vibration is screaming lack, if you're thinking, I need this so desperately, I'm not okay without it, I'm incomplete, I'm insufficient, then that's the signal the universe is receiving and reflecting back. To you, your beautiful intentions become irrelevant because they're being drowned out by the louder, more authentic frequency of fear and scarcity broadcasting from your subconscious. This is why so many genuinely good people struggle financially while seemingly less deserving individuals prosper. It has nothing to do with morality or worthiness or who has better reasons for wanting success. The universe isn't sitting in judgment, deciding who deserves wealth based on character or virtue. It's simply operating as a perfect mirror, reflecting back the vibrational patterns you're consistently broadcasting, without any moral evaluation whatsoever. Good people struggle not because they're being punished, but because their frequency doesn't match prosperity, regardless of how pure their intentions are. Behind the scenes of your daily life, there's this constant disconnect between what you think you're asking for and what you're actually requesting through your frequency. And until you bridge that gap, until your intentions and your vibrations align, nothing changes externally, no matter how good your reasons are. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how to actually create that alignment, because there's a specific process that can happen tonight while you sleep that begins to harmonize your conscious intentions with your subconscious frequency. And it all starts with recognizing where the misalignment currently exists. The universe isn't a moral authority sitting somewhere evaluating who deserves what based on their character. It's not rewarding virtue and punishing vice. It's not keeping score of good deeds versus bad behavior. And once you truly understand this, it's both liberating and deeply challenging, because it means the rules you thought governed success don't actually exist. The universe operates on frequency and frequency alone. It's a mirror, a reflection system, an echo chamber that amplifies and returns whatever signal you're broadcasting, with absolute precision and zero judgment. This is why you see kind, generous, hard-working people struggling financially, while others who seem selfish or careless experience prosperity flowing to them effortlessly. It's not evidence that the world is unfair or broken. It's evidence that morality and frequency are two completely different things. That generous person might be broadcasting a frequency of unworthiness or guilt around wealth. Maybe they absorb the belief that wanting money is somehow greedy, or that good people shouldn't focus on material things. That frequency of conflict around prosperity creates struggle, regardless of how kind and giving they are in their daily life. Meanwhile, someone who appears selfish might be broadcasting a frequency of complete deservingness and expectation. They feel entitled to abundance, they expect good things to flow to them, and they have zero guilt or conflict about receiving wealth. The universe doesn't care that their character might be less admirable. It simply matches the frequency it receives. This isn't cruel, it's mechanical. It's how the system operates without bias or preference. Your moral standing doesn't determine your financial reality. Your frequency does. And this brings us to something that keeps more people trapped in financial struggle than almost anything else. The pattern of pursuing what you need from a place of fear and desperation. Think about what happens inside you when you desperately need something to work out. Maybe it's a job interview, a potential client, a sale, any situation where you feel like everything depends on this one outcome. Can you feel how that desperation changes your entire energy? Your voice gets tighter even when you're trying to sound confident. Your movements become more urgent, more controlled. There's a subtle pleading running underneath everything you say and do, even when you're consciously trying to appear relaxed and capable. And what happens? More. Often than not, the very thing you need so badly slips away. The job goes to someone else. The client chooses a competitor. The opportunity falls through at the last moment. Not because you didn't try hard enough, not because you weren't qualified, but because your desperation was broadcasting a frequency that actively repelled what you were chasing. You were essentially announcing to the universe through your energy, I don't have this. I need this desperately. I'm incomplete without it. And the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, reflected that message back by creating more situations where you don't have what you need. This is the trap that perpetuates itself endlessly. You need money, so you approach opportunities from need, which broadcasts lack, which creates more situations where you need money. The cycle feeds itself year after year, and you remain stuck wondering why you can't break through despite all your effort. The harder you chase from this place of fear, the faster prosperity runs away from you. It's like trying to catch your own shadow by running toward it. The pursuit itself ensures you'll never catch what you're chasing. Behind the scenes of this pattern, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how attraction actually works. People think that showing how much you need something will make the universe more likely to give it to you, as if desperation somehow proves your worthiness. But it works in exactly the opposite way. Need repels. Desperation creates distance. Fear pushes away what fear is focused on. The energy you bring to your pursuit matters more than the pursuit itself. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding what the alternative to this desperate pursuit actually looks like, because there's a state of being that naturally attracts what you desire without any of the struggle or anxiety. And accessing that state is far simpler than most people realize once you understand the shift that needs to happen. There's a completely different way to relate to abundance that most people never discover because it contradicts everything they've been taught. It's the shift from requesting to receiving, and understanding this distinction could change everything about your financial reality starting tonight. Think about how you relate to air. You don't wake up each morning and beg for oxygen. You don't spend your day anxious about whether there will be enough air for your next breath. You don't question whether you deserve to breathe or try to prove your worthiness of the atmosphere. You simply breathe, naturally, effortlessly, without thought or anxiety. The air is always there, always available, and you receive it as your natural birthright. Now think about sunlight. You don't spend your nights worried that tomorrow the sun might decide not to rise. You don't stand outside at dawn pleading with the universe to send daylight. You don't approach the morning with desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, you'll be granted another day of sunshine. You simply receive it. The sun rises, and you bask in its light and warmth without any sense of lack or fear. That's receiving. That's what it means to operate from a state of natural expectation rather than desperate request. Money works exactly the same way when you understand it as a state of being rather than something external you need to pursue. When you're in a receiving state, you're open, relaxed, expectant in a calm way. There's no grasping, no anxiety, no sense of lack lurking beneath the surface. You're simply available for what's already flowing towards you. You breathe it in like air, you receive it like sunlight, and that state of being creates a completely different reality than the state of requesting, which always carries an undercurrent of, "I don't have this yet, please give it to me, I hope you won't deny me." Can you feel how different those two approaches are energetically? One feels spacious and natural, the other feels constricted and forced. The transformation happens when you stop treating abundance as something you need to convince the universe to give you, and start recognizing it as something you're simply ready to receive because it's part of the natural flow of life. But here's where this gets really interesting, and it's probably the most counterintuitive truth you'll hear about prosperity. Wealth arrives precisely when you no longer need it to feel secure. Read that again slowly, because it inverts everything conventional wisdom teaches. We believe we need money to feel secure, that once we have enough in the bank, then we can finally relax and stop worrying. But the hidden mechanism actually works in reverse. When your internal stability depends on money, when you're telling yourself, "I'll feel okay once I have this amount," or "I'll be secure when I reach that milestone," you're actually vibrating loss. You're broadcasting a frequency that says your well-being is contingent on something outside your control, something you don't currently have. And what does the universe do with that signal? It confirms it. It keeps you in situations where your security feels threatened, where money comes and goes unpredictably, where you're always one crisis away from disaster. Not because reality is cruel, but because you're asking for instability by making your internal state dependent on external conditions. You're essentially broadcasting, "Without this external thing, I'm not okay." And the Universe responds by showing you more situations where you're not okay. But when your security comes from within, when you've cultivated a deep knowing that you're fundamentally okay regardless of what's in your bank account, something miraculous happens. Money stops being a source of anxiety and transforms into something completely different. It becomes a tool for amplification rather than a necessity for survival. If you're already peaceful, money amplifies that peace. If you're already creative, money amplifies that creativity. If you're already generous, money amplifies your capacity to give. The money itself isn't changing who you are at the core. It's revealing and expanding your existing state. Behind the scenes of every genuine financial transformation, there's this shift from external dependence to internal foundation. Someone stops making their peace contingent on circumstances and starts cultivating it as an internal reality. And paradoxically, that's precisely when external prosperity begins flowing naturally. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually creates this internal security, because there's a specific understanding that dissolves the need for external validation. And once you grasp it, everything about your relationship with wealth transforms automatically, almost effortlessly. Money is often called a magnifying glass, but that's not quite accurate. It's more like an amplifier, a multiplier of whatever's already present in your core state. If you're peaceful and content at a fundamental level, money amplifies that peace and gives you more capacity to express it in the world. If you're creative and inspired, money amplifies those qualities, providing more resources to bring your visions to life. But here's what nobody wants to acknowledge. If you're insecure, anxious, and operating from fear, money amplifies those states too. It doesn't heal them. It doesn't magically transform you into someone different. It simply makes more visible and more powerful whatever you already are beneath the surface. This is why so many people who finally achieve wealth through years of grinding and sacrifice find themselves more anxious than they were before. They thought money would solve their internal struggles, but instead it magnified them. They brought their insecurity with them, and the money simply amplified it into bigger worries, more things to fear losing, more complexity to manage. The external circumstances changed, but the internal frequency remained the same, and that frequency determined their actual experience of having wealth. Let me tell you about someone whose journey illustrates this perfectly. His name was Niall, and by every conventional measure, he should have been successful. He was disciplined beyond what most people could even imagine. He woke before dawn, worked until midnight, rarely took breaks, never complained. He believed with absolute conviction that success belonged to those who earned it, through pure force of will and relentless effort. And he was determined to outwork everyone around him until prosperity had no choice but to surrender to his determination. Yet despite doing everything right according to conventional wisdom, something strange kept happening. The harder Niall worked, the less he prospered. The more hours he invested, the more losses appeared. His business ventures would mysteriously fall apart at the last moment. Clients would vanish without explanation. Carefully planned strategies would collapse right before they were supposed to pay off. From the outside, it made absolutely no sense. Here was someone giving everything he had and receiving nothing but frustration in return. But from a vibrational perspective, the pattern was crystal clear. Niall wasn't working from a place of expansion or joy or alignment. He was working from fear disguised as discipline. Every action was contaminated with the desperate energy of, "I must make this work, or I'm worthless." Every decision was driven by terror of failure. Every late night at the office was motivated by panic rather than passion. His business hadn't been built on vision or genuine value creation. It had been built on fear. And that frequency, no matter how much effort accompanied it, was creating his reality. The transformation in Niall's life began when someone told him something that shattered his entire worldview. They said, "Gold never sought those who worked hardest. It always sought those who vibrated highest." Those words landed like a punch because they invalidated everything Niall had built his identity around. His entire self-worth was tied to his ability to outwork everyone else. The idea that his effort might be irrelevant or worse, counterproductive, was almost unbearable to consider. But that revelation was exactly what he needed to hear because it pointed him toward the real work that needed to happen. Not more external effort, but internal transformation. Not longer hours, but higher frequency. Behind the scenes of every genuine breakthrough, there's always this shift from doing more to being different. Niall had to stop relying on effort alone and start aligning his frequency with the prosperity he was pursuing. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this shift actually looks like in practice, because understanding the concept is one thing, but implementing it is where most people get stuck. And there's a specific process that can begin tonight, while you sleep, that makes this transformation accessible in ways your conscious effort never could. There are 3 paths people unconsciously walk in their pursuit of prosperity, and understanding which one you're on right now could be the most important insight you gain from this entire conversation. The first path is dark and shadowy, lined with obstacles that seem to multiply the further you walk. This is the path of fear, where every decision comes from, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if everything falls apart? When you walk this path, even when you make progress, new problems appear faster than you can solve the old ones. It's exhausting, demoralizing, and it never seems to lead anywhere except to more fear. The second path is made of sand, constantly shifting beneath your feet. This is the path of empty effort, where you can work endlessly, move constantly, exhaust yourself completely, and still find yourself exactly where you started. The sand absorbs all your energy without ever solidifying into stable ground. You make progress during the day, but by morning, those footprints have been erased by the wind. How many times have you poured everything into building something only to watch it dissolve like sandcastles when the tide comes in? That's not bad luck. That's what happens when effort isn't aligned with the right frequency. But there's a third path, and this one looks completely different from the other 2. It's golden, illuminated from within, solid and clear. This is the path of remembered value, where decisions come from certainty rather than fear or desperate striving. Walking this path doesn't require grinding effort or anxious pushing. It requires something much simpler and simultaneously much more challenging, remembering your inherent worth. Not earning it through suffering, not proving it through achievement, not justifying it through sacrifice, but simply remembering it as something that's always been true, even when you forgot. The transformation happens when you realize you've been alternating between the dark path and the sandy path your entire life, never even knowing that the golden path existed. You thought those were your only 2 options: operate from fear or work yourself to exhaustion. But there's a third way, and it's been available all along. The challenge is that you can't access the golden path through force or strategy. You can only access it through identity transformation, by becoming someone who naturally walks that path because they've remembered who they truly are beneath all the conditioning and fear. Let me tell you about someone who discovered this path in the most unexpected way. Her name was Nara, and she'd been stuck at the edge of just enough for years. Not poverty, never crisis, but also never breakthrough, never that feeling of true financial freedom where you can breathe deeply and know you're genuinely okay. One morning, exhausted from trying so hard for so long, she surrendered. Not in defeat, but in genuine release, and in that moment, something shifted in the quality of light around her. A circle appeared on her floor, gentle and inviting like moonlight pooling on water. When Nara stepped into that circle, She experienced something that words can barely capture. She heard what she would later describe as a soft, harmonic hum, like someone had touched an invisible string that had been silent her entire life. The vibration resonated somewhere deep in her chest, in her solar plexus, in the very core of her being. It wasn't a voice speaking words, it wasn't a thought in her mind. It was her abundance frequency speaking to her, not from outside, but from within. This frequency had always been there, always broadcasting, always available, but it had been completely drowned out by the noise of not enough that had been playing on repeat in her mind for years. The moment everyone else's voices went quiet, the moment her own mental chatter stopped, suddenly that frequency became crystal clear. She was tuning into something that had been waiting for her attention all along. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this frequency actually represents and how you can begin tuning into it tonight while you sleep. Because there's a specific process that happens when you finally quiet the noise and allow your natural abundance frequency to emerge. Imagine a place where the buffer between your thoughts and their manifestation doesn't exist. In most of reality, there's a merciful delay between what you think and what actually appears in your life. You can think scarcity today and not see the consequences until weeks or months later. This delay gives you the illusion that your thoughts don't really matter that much, that what happens in your mind stays in your mind. But what if that buffer was removed? What if every thought manifested immediately, showing you with perfect clarity what you're actually creating? There's a story about a city called Mirabal, where exactly this phenomenon occurred. The veil between thought and reality was paper-thin, almost transparent. When a young man named Elon entered this city, he had no idea what he was walking into. The moment he looked at the beautiful architecture and thriving marketplace around him, his mind automatically generated a familiar pattern of thoughts. What if this is too expensive for me? What if I don't belong here? What if I can't afford to stay? These weren't dramatic thoughts. They were the kind of subtle, almost invisible doubts that run through most people's minds dozens of times a day without notice. But in Mirabal, nothing goes unnoticed. The instant that thought formed in his consciousness, a shadow appeared at his feet. Not his regular shadow from the sun, but something else entirely, a darkness that emerged from his own energy field, from the frequency he was broadcasting. And unlike a normal shadow that stays consistent, this one grew. It expanded with every repetition of the fearful thought, feeding on his internal scarcity, manifesting his doubt into visible form. Within moments, the shadow had grown from the size of a coin to the size of his body, spreading across the ground like spilled ink. The city wasn't punishing him, it was simply showing him with complete accuracy what his thoughts were creating. In most places, those same thoughts would have created the exact same shadow, the same limitation, the same closed doors. But the manifestation would have been delayed enough that he'd never make the connection between his thinking and his reality. Mirabal removed that delay, forcing him to see the direct link between his internal state and his external experience. The shadow was proof that his thoughts had immediate creative power, whether he believed it or not. This is what's happening in your life right now, every single day. The only difference is the delay makes it invisible. You're creating shadows with your fearful thoughts, limitations with your doubtful beliefs, barriers with your scarcity mindset. But because the manifestation doesn't happen instantly, you never connect the dots. You think your thoughts are harmless, private, irrelevant to what actually shows up in your bank account. But they're not. They're instructions being sent out constantly, creating your reality with the same precision that created Elon's shadow, just slowly enough that you don't notice the connection. The transformation from struggle to prosperity isn't about changing your circumstances first. It's about recognizing that you're the one creating the shadows and you have the power to stop. But that requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to opportunities and abundance. Most people spend their lives as seekers, believing that opportunities are hidden somewhere out there in the world, waiting to be discovered through relentless searching. They're always looking outward, always scanning the environment, always dependent on external circumstances aligning. But there's another way. You can become what I call a convoker, someone who understands that opportunities aren't scattered randomly in the world. They're vibrational responses to your internal identity. When you become a convoker, opportunities don't require hunting or struggling. They emerge naturally, almost effortlessly, because your entire being is aligned with receiving them. You're not chasing prosperity, you're magnetizing it through your frequency. Now, I want to go even deeper into how tonight, while you sleep, your mind can begin this shift from seeker to convoker, because there's a specific process that happens in your subconscious during those quiet hours that can accelerate this transformation in ways your conscious mind could never achieve alone. So here we are, and if you've made it this far with me, that tells me something important. You're not just someone who watches videos looking for quick fixes or surface-level answers. You're someone who's genuinely ready to understand how this all works at a deeper level, and that matters more than you might realize. The fact that you stayed through this entire journey means you're operating differently than most people, and that difference is going to show up in your results. If this resonated with you, if something shifted while you were listening, I'd genuinely love to have you subscribe to the channel. What we explore here goes deeper with each video, revealing more about how your mind creates your reality and how you can work with these invisible forces instead of against them. This isn't just random content. It's a complete framework for understanding how frequency and consciousness shape everything you experience, especially around money and abundance. Leave a comment right now and just write, "This message was meant for me." Let me know you made it all the way through, because I read every single comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your readiness publicly. It anchors the shift you're making internally, turning insight into commitment. And if you'd hit that like button, it helps this message reach other people who need to hear it. People who are tired of chasing and ready to start attracting. People who sense there's a different way to relate to prosperity, but haven't found the framework to understand it yet. Your like creates a ripple that extends this conversation beyond just you and me. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the practical side of what we just covered, how to actually shift your frequency in real time when you catch yourself falling back into old patterns. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've learned today is just the beginning of what's possible when you truly understand how your mind creates wealth while you sleep. I'll see you in the next one.